next up, we are going to move on to Chris Coquard, who at this point, I was preparing just some introductory notes about the different speakers. And we had a discussion about keeping these things brief so that we can really get into the thick of it. And it felt like no one needed less introduction at this point than Chris. I do just want to say that Chris has done a phenomenal job organizing this conference over the last year. I have helped out with a lot of academic conferences and conferences of various sorts over the years, and I've really rarely encountered somebody as dedicated and hardworking as Chris. So I hope you'll all give his presentation special attention. I really look forward to it. And Chris, if there's more you want to say about yourself, feel free.
You're making me all teary-eyed, Jason.
I think we all have the utmost
stop
respect
it. Stop
for you.
it, man.
So, handing it off to Chris now.
Most of the people here, many of the presenters will be tired of my name. I'm surprised you showed up after the 6 million emails that I've been sending. So what a amazing crowd of people that we have. Javier, thank you. I see today, I've written down everybody's names. I want to try to do something new, okay? So bear with me. I want to try to make this interesting and see how we can push technology to do what we need to do. But yeah, what a gang we have. And thank you everybody for being here. Now, I'm going to share my screen because I have a little presentation ready. Let me just see if it's the right one. So, Jason, can you see my screen?
I do not currently see it, no.
Okay. All right, so
there we go.
All right. Now, if I go into present mode,
voila.
Is that all right? Voila. Yes. All right. Here's my plan. I want to keep my presentation part exceptionally short, and that works well for the second volume of Ethics, which is itself just a series of sketches. I'm going to be bouncing between French, English, every once in a while, beautiful little sentence of Russian there. But I really want to save time for something new here. I'm going to use the breakout rooms. And I'm going to put us into breakout rooms, and I'm going to have us begin a critical discussion. It's probably, in my opinion, the most critical discussion that we need to be having today and every day. This, by the way, is Kropotkin's writing. He wrote that. I've been working on collecting the second volume of Ethics, and maybe you can't see my screen too well, just a little thing here. These are the typewritten pages that I've been sent. And I believe this is how I see the second volume of Ethics. So the natural origin of the moral sense, and this is mutual aid. For me, that really is the purpose of the second volume, okay? What Kropotkin himself tentatively called the essence or substance of morality, okay? I chose a series of these pictures over here. I especially chose these ones for other professors because if you could see my office right now, I don't feel alone in it being extremely messy. So yeah, okay, good. I'm not the only one. I don't have that many books, but yeah, my office does look something like that. I've included a quote here, and I've taken the French, and let me tell you why I've been relying heavily on the French. The English volume of Ethics that many of you know, available online, Black Rose Books. Okay, I have it. I've read it. It's all good. When I had the choice, when I chose to review Kropotkin's work, quite often I was able to choose between French and English. The French version of it got destroyed so much I had to put it into these two little binders over here. And this was the version translated by his very good friend, Marie Goldsmith, that I will have the honor soon to share some insights with Sarah, who's kindly, who's kindly given her time to talk more about these women in Kropotkin's life. This a translator can go beyond and interpret and render it into an absolutely beautiful and inspiring French text. No disrespect to the English one, but it's really, very inspiring. So this is a quote from her introduction. It's a 2-page introduction. I'll be sharing it with in the anthology that I translated. Society preceded humanity. Okay, society existed before our anthropomorphical ancestor became human. This is something that's kind of surprising to people. And that was what Marie Goldsmith wrote. You couldn't really find quite clearly in the first volume of Ethics, but in the text that I just translated or transcribed a few days ago, Kropotkin's essay called Justice and Equality in French, he wrote exactly the same thing. So the conclusion that he arrived at, he said to himself, was that it would be easier for humanity to learn to walk on 4 legs than to get rid of the sentiment of sociability with its consequences, the moral sense. Because in the human evolution, the apparition of sociability preceded by far the vertical position of man. Now that's the French he used, la position verticale de l'homme. In other words, the ability to walk on 2 feet. Okay, now that's going to be critical when we come, in my opinion anyway, to start to understand what is Kropotkin's moral sense. Now, Jason mentioned, a lot of you mentioned maybe thinking, and as of Tuesday, I'm taking a 1-week Kropotkin sabbatical. Anyway, but one of the things that's inspired me relates to this quote here, and that every once in a while in human society, there's a shift backwards. We have regressive movements. I don't need to tell you what they are. Everybody here can think of what they are in Russia, Italy, Quebec, the United States, okay? But we shouldn't let those disconcern us, okay? This is kind of his little pep talk over here that I feel, okay, all right? The fact that we still have these ethical discussions, the fact that we're all here together, the fact that we come back and we ask more questions could itself be a symptom that we are slowly working towards an ethical values that are higher and higher and higher. So Kropotkin, the geologist, you can look at ethics in a similar way. The landscape of ethics, a geological landscape of ethics, shifts, thankfully. And despite it going back from time to time, living these difficult times and being confined at home, being here with all of you today is a real honor and privilege for me. And it's just, here we are, we're having discussions that we haven't had in the past. So take a moment and feel good about that. And I particularly like this quote that brings us back to a lot of what people have been saying. We cannot love everyone, okay? But we should respect the dignity of everybody. We cannot force nous pouvons exiger qu'on nous aime. We cannot force people to love us, but we have absolutely the right to force them to respect us as people. The foundation of a new society on mutual love is impossible, but we can and we should build it on the base of mutual respect. I'm telling you, the French one is brilliantly written. And I forgot, forgive me, Brandon, Mr. Banali, if you're here, I forgot my little spew yesterday that you reminded me of. I am right now, and we all in North America are on unceded indigenous territory, but we are doing our best to find a way forward, the land back movement, trying to readjust, reintegrate, and ethics is at the heart of that. So many of you can look at why, what's the principal goal of ethics? Well, it's to explain why and how we can have feelings, okay? Le penser le bien-être des autres, de sentir, okay? To feel the well-being of others, et même de tout, of everybody, okay? Comme leur propre bien-être. So how can I live or find a way where the well-being of everybody becomes my own proper thing? Is it a natural instinct? Is it this? Where does it come from? How does it evolve? How do we keep it? How do we lose it sometimes in these regressive ages? How can we get it back? How can we move forward, right? And here, cette obligation de devoir, so this sense of duty that we have, and our ability to identify with others. So listening to Javier in Los Angeles, or to Sarah in Florida, or to Hillary in Pittsburgh, or to Bruno and Franco in Italy, and our friends in Russia, how can we, so anyway, so okay, I'm going to get to it. I think I'm going to leave that. Well, okay, quickly, because I'm going to give you this in a moment. Just watch my time here. We have, again, part of the introduction here to Kropokin's Ethics in French. Mary Goldsmith wrote a brilliant introduction, and I translated it. You'll have it soon. Great. Where she started to make it clear, and Joey, if you're here, and I think you're here with me, right, Joey? Yeah, he's here. I'm going to use him and abuse him in a few minutes. We have a very clear, okay, the three parts of Kropokin's ethical formula. Okay, so sociability, sympathy, well-being, that leads eventually to generosity. Now, I'm not sure about you, but okay, I want to figure this out. Okay, trois stades successifs, one that follows the other. So this is the first step that I took. Yeah, okay, that's kind of how things look in my brain. I kind of went back to the very, very beginning of what is the basis of it all. Well, that's the sense of evolution. Okay, so we have a natural sense of ethics, point one. Point two, that brings us to Darwin. Now, then Darwin went in two different directions. No, the interpretation of Darwin, let's say, in easy forms, went in two different directions. We got Huxley and Spencer that argued that, the natural environment is the survival of the fittest, and that's that fierce nature. Many of you in your presentations are like, he went to Siberia and he was looking for it, didn't find it. I believe, Lee, in your presentation, you mentioned that quite clearly. No, it wasn't there. What was there? Well, there was mutual aid. So then we have a third step, 1, 2, 3. And then more specifically, okay, mutual aid is not everywhere absolutely all the time. We just talked about regressive movements, and yes, they're a fact of life. So what are the social, political, and economic conditions that create those? So that's where ethics touches on politics, economics. And I wanted to mention, I had to use the word motley crew here today, because we are 23 to my last count, maybe more now, a motley crew. Look at us. Evolutionary biologists, teachers, philosophers. Kropotkin offers a unique ethical perspective because he was not an armchair philosopher. He was much more than that. He was a geologist. He was a geographer. He was a sociologist as well as a scientist. Okay, and then he entered into the realm of philosophy, which brought us, I think, a very unique perspective. So then I started to crack it down a little bit more. Be like, okay, well, this is the first one that's been identified. This is the second one that's been identified. And this is the third one that's been identified here. And you can see I took little snippets of what Marie Goldsmith in her introduction. And then I went a little overboard, to be honest with you, and started to go through the entire first volume of ethics and put them in each one of these different places. And I can show you what that looks like in a few minutes to kind of organize better. Because we need to remember the first volume of ethics was not finished when he died. And although he started it with one purpose, it became kind of like a historical review of ethics leading up to, but every once in a while, and Joey mentioned this yesterday too in his presentation, it's kind of peppered and scattered, this piece and that hint and that clue. It's like a ethical Easter egg hunt going through that book. And so I tried to, hammer some things more in there. This is the one that tends to be the most confusing for me for now. Then I thought, well, I'll start to look at it maybe like this. All right, so we have a base, and then we have another one, then we have another one over here on top. Now this is the one that Kropotkin himself mentioned, and I'm not sure where I put that quote. Here. Okay, good. Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Here. Okay, and this is from Kropotkin himself. BRB, by the way, is Black Rose book, so it's taken from this edition, the text here, where he mentions it quite clearly. 1, 2, 3. So Marie Goldsmith didn't invent it. You do find it all over the place, Joey. Later on, you can confirm this, as you did anyway, quite clearly in your presentation yesterday. It was exactly the same thing. But here we are. Okay, mutual aid, okay, is the strongest one. And the third one, this famous morality one, is an unstable feeling and the least imperative of the three. So quite often throughout your presentations, I've been consistently asking people, okay, well, what do we do? You know, how do we go there? And Dennis, you know, had his response, well, just do more and this and that. And everybody had their similar kind of real challenge is how do we, you know, get towards this third step over here, the peak of the mountain, right? All right. Quickly before I move you into your breakout rooms, and everybody will have access to this over here. This was just a sense of certain quotes. Again, I took them from Marie Goldsmith, and I can help you translate them at a later point in more detail. But basically, this is where he talks about, okay, so this is the basic of over here, okay? It's essence, okay? The essence of life is sociability and mutual aid. Okay, la source de la morale gît dans la sociabilité propre à tous les animaux supérieurs et à l'homme surtout. Hey, for those people who think that Kropotkin didn't start infringing on animal rights, that's not entirely true because this is les animaux supérieurs. Okay, so Lee, I had him go off on I'm sorry for that, Lee, by the way, if you're here, I had you go to the world of marine mammals because other than Kropotkin, I'm fascinated with marine mammals and culture of marine mammals. So yeah, he mentioned that. Justice and equality. He tended to speak quite a bit about Proudhon here. See, told you. All right, so this is the basic equality. Well, what is equality? Just basic math. 1 + 1, you know, equals 2. So I give you this and then you give me that, and this is my right and that's your right, and that's the whole second element. The third element of it here, and this is where Mr. Alloy, Joey, poor Joey, if he still agrees to talk to me after my 8 million emails is what I'm going to be really hammering him about. And this morning, I spent some time with the other speaker we had, Nikolai. He was on the first day there with Vadim and Dimitri that Javier mentioned earlier. We spent about an hour and a half trying to crack this down. So I was like, okay, look, as our project, because I have a project for ethics too, and then kind of like a follow-up project. And so that kind of hurt our brains a little bit, but in a good way. No, it didn't hurt our brains. It made our brains feel better. Okay, it's 24. I'm watching the time. Now, I want this to be an interesting discussion. I want us to talk, and I want to be able to go through the breakout rooms. I want to be able to say hello to everybody that's here. And I like that intimacy as much as that sociability. Okay, so don't blame me, blame mutual aid, blame evolution, that I'm craving it. So important for me to take some time today to be able to say hello to every one of you. That's important. Okay. Want to talk about a new society? You want to talk about horizontalism? Well, let's break it down. Let's talk. And every single one of you provided some super cool insights. Jason and Bruce had some awesome things to say. Tom did too. Sean and Emmanuel, Marie-Odile, Fayan, super. And I hope that everybody agrees with me. Well, who haven't I spoken to yet? I've picked on a couple of you over there. But Rifki, I don't know if he's still here. Are you here, Rifki? Franco, what about you? How are you doing, sir? Are you there, Franco? This is what my teaching looks like, by the way, okay? That student
I've,
has
I've,
gone to the
I've,
bathroom for 4 hours. But damn, Chris keeps asking us our names randomly. Sean, how you doing, sir? Put on your microphone for a moment, please. Right. Am I pronouncing your name right, by the way?
Yep, just a normal Sean.
Thank you. It's a challenge to think about these things, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, so the thing that it was kind of, we had a diversity of languages in our room, so we were doing a lot of cross-lingual introductions, which is always good and appropriate for an internationals project. We sort of got started on some questions, and we sort of had time to kind of think about them a bit. I think like one thing that was really striking me is it's interesting to think about how Kropotkin was writing at the really like the epical high point of racism, both in, the British, global empire, and also in the US, sort of the redemption period. So really like the time, those first couple decades of the 20th century were higher low point of racist thinking. And of course, racism is also a biologically founded system of ethics, right? So
biologically founded.
Yeah, I mean,
air
like
quotes.
Wrongly so, but it's founded in biological claims. So I was kind of, and again, now like in the US, I'm in Seattle, and we are in the midst of a now nearly year-long intensive uprising against racism, and a increasing recognition even among kind of liberals that that racism is the basis of American capitalism. So I was really kind of curious. Obviously, Kropotkin thought about this stuff. I haven't had a chance to dig through his ethical writing, but I'm really curious about the sort of misappropriation of, but like his response to the kind of misappropriation of biological, of course, social Darwinism, he made an explicit point about, but specifically with race, and the claim that races were sort of maybe analogous to species, because in mutual aid, he doesn't necessarily, he agrees to some degree with the social Darwinists that you have competition across species, right? And it's the mutual aid is generally within a species, not exclusively, but so if you look at, as was commonplace in his time, if you look at different races of people as analogous to species, then I almost wonder if like they would see the contradiction in it, and how he dealt with that in this time.
That's such a really insightful thing to say, Sean. And I want to remind everybody that this is a horizontal place here. There is no way that I'm coming to you from above. Trust me. Anybody who's going to ask me any details about Spinoza, I'm going to pretend that my internet died. Okay, and you're never going to see me again. But I learned so much from all of you, and you're right. In ethics, as I mentioned to Sean when we spoke, I know that mutual aid, Kropotkin relied heavily on, and this will be good for you theory of knowledge people, he relied heavily on writers and anthropologists that weren't always racially unbiased. In fact, that were rarely racially unbiased. He did a little bit of writing about Louis Riel, which is kind of cool. Kropotkin was in Canada not long after Riel was killed, had some things to say about that. It was also part of bringing the Duke of Boers over to Canada as settlers. So he did have a little bit of that settler mentality. And with all due respect to him and his time, but that's our current debate, isn't it? When you look at Kropotkin, it's not Saint Kropotkin, it's Kropotkin from 1921. And in ethics, for example, the second volume, there's a whole chapter called Primitive Ethics. And he uses the word that nobody ever uses today called savages. He uses that word in English and in French, des sauvages, okay? C'est écrit en français, des sauvages. He used that term there. Now then Sean's great question is, well, how much of that did that really influence? And so that's, you see, the challenge is, okay, let's clarify what Kropotkin thought, but that's not where I'm going to stop. That's where I'm going to start. And that's where I'm going to do this again. But I'm going to do it with people who are really interested in going deep and now thinking, okay, well, what was lacking, okay, in the Swiss cheese of Kropotkin's ethics? Where can we find those mistakes, and how can this be salvaged? Because Kropotkin himself, and I didn't maybe include that quote here because I had to be a good boy and not talk to you for 8 hours. But one of the things he said is that ethics is never definitive. ethics is never complete. Ethics is in a constant cycle of adaptation. Kropotkin was decentralist, so ethics applies in different places in different ways, and in different times in different ways too. You can't approach it necessarily as a cookie cutter kind of thing. There are some basics there. And by the way, Sean, when you said you were from Seattle, I was expecting you to say I'm from Seattle, and there's 8 Starbucks within 2 minutes of where I live. Anyway, I just wanted to tease you. I had to throw in that Seattle diss there, with all due respect.
It gives us anarchists something to smash, so we're grateful for them.
Oh, nice. Okay, yeah, we should do some Against Me playing over there, right? There we go. Baby, I'm an Anarchist. I haven't listened to that song in a long time. Okay, will do. Yeah, and I don't know. I'm not sure I have the answers to any of your questions. I don't think I want to approach it that way. What I want to approach is that all of us start to think a little more about how we can be more ethical. I think that would be my ta-da moment, towards each other. And yeah, hopefully you'll be interested in helping me figure this crazy thing out. And I hope you didn't mind the breakout rooms. Were they terrible? Charles, was it an okay experience? You have to turn on your microphone.
Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yeah.
We were just beginning to get to know each other, so we didn't have very long. There were only 3 of us, and we'd barely got past the introductions, but we were getting on like a house on fire. But I'm afraid we didn't we didn't really get around to defining any action plan.
I disagree though, because Hillary framed it. Hillary, you want to give me that frame again, because it was brilliant.
Come on, Hillary, I obviously missed it.
Oh dear, I don't know exactly how I framed it, but we were enacting the sociability of mutual aid, like actually getting to know one another.
Oh, I walked in, I'm like, you're not working,
practice.
Hillary. And Charles, you're just showing off your library. And Hillary said, well, Christopher, we are being sociable, which is I'm like, okay, I gotta leave, man. I gotta mic drop, walk off the stage. I can't handle that kind of brilliance, Hillary. You should know that. Shine too bright.
You're too much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Flattery comes easily to you, clearly, Chris.
Thank you. There's some people are telling me they want to call me Larry King. Hey, Larry King. Hey, why are you calling me Larry King? You're right. I miss you guys, right? I don't know. Many of you I don't know. Some of these poor people are my students. They're the ones that are crying.
God.
Turning off their cameras soon too. It's a Sunday, man. What are you doing here? I know, because I forced them to be here. Anyway, respect. So that's pretty much what I want to share with you. Okay. And I'm going to share the introduction to the 2nd volume of Ethics, and you have a copy of the PowerPoint. And just think about it, man. I think that's the best we can do.